A champion freediver and expert safety diver seemed destined for one another despite the different paths they took to meet at the pinnacle of the freediving world. A look at the thrilling rewards and inescapable risks of chasing dreams through the depths of the ocean. So, this is a fascinating look at the incredibly tense and dangerous sport of freediving. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Divers take a breath, dive down as deep as they can, and then rise back up to the surface, all while trying not to black out or die. I mean, it's harrowing, but it's also exciting. Alessia Zecchini is an Italian freediver who pursued the sport from a very young age, and we get to see just a ton of her dives and training throughout this as she is the focus. The movie does a good job of establishing and explaining the sport somewhat, which is great for anybody that's never even heard of this. I mean, there's background about the other divers and world record holders, as well as it's taking us to some of the locations where these extremely deep dives take place. The cinematography is stunning and beautiful. There are cameras in the water that follow the divers down into the dark depths. Plus, there are typically cameras at the very lowest point of the dive, so we get a glimpse of the diver grabbing the necessary tag to prove that they met the depth before then rising back up to the surface. It's nail-biting and uncomfortable for a lot of the runtime. Now, I found myself unintentionally holding my breath as divers plunge down through the darkness in what just seemed to be an insurmountable feat of breath holding. As we follow the story of Alessia, there are a bunch of interviews with family members, other professionals in the sport, as well as a bunch of safety staff who look after the divers as they compete and train. And these help to provide a bunch of insight, not only into the mindsets of the divers, but also just gives us detailed information on all the risks and what could or has gone wrong. During the hour and 48-minute movie, some of this plays out like a thriller or a mystery, where some of the references to individuals are kept mildly vague, leading to questions on if someone is still alive. And yeah, I mean, you could just do a quick Google search on that, but I enjoyed the anxiety that this produced. It amped up the real-life drama, which in turn made this incredibly captivating. If you ever used to see the ABC Wide World of Sports, their tagline was the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Well, we're showing a lot of that here. I mean, you have multiple divers attempt to reach not only new personal bests, but also conquer world records. And it's so tense and engaging to just see a diver beat a record to only have the very next opponent break that newly established record. And we can see the frustration in the diver's eyes and then the renewed determination to go again. The human story in this is also what makes it so intriguing to watch. To see how far people are willing to push themselves and how much they're willing to endure in order to achieve a goal. And that drive, I mean, it's infectious and exciting. Now, it's not infectious enough to make me want to just all of a sudden take up freediving, but the energy and the pursuit, that's a lot of fun to watch, even if it's also anxiety producing. And as for as touching and emotionally engaging as the story of Alessia and the other divers is, what continually kept drawing my attention was the way the depths are captured. I mean, we get aerial shots that show us just where the seafloor drops off into oblivion, going from a very light blue to almost black in what appears to be only feet. And then a bunch of the dive spots are these just massive holes in the ocean floor. So watching the divers descend past the coral and the rocks to an area that just suddenly becomes wide open and vast, it's daunting and terrifying, and then beautiful. One of the divers compares it to what they imagine space is like, and I think it looks just as freaky, to venture into an area that is just utter darkness, where any mishap could instantly claim a life. Probably the only drawback in this entire film is that it can feel a little repetitive because we're constantly watching dive after dive, and then so many of them just look very familiar. I mean, there's still excitement because the outcomes are always unknown and the danger is very real every single time. But when we watch a diver take a couple of breaths, dive down following a rope to grab a tag at the bottom, and then ascend, some of it looks the same. I mean, I wasn't bored by this, but the repetition, it can be noticeable. Now, I've seen another film that has to do with freediving, and in that, they explained all about the safety divers and the limitations of help each can provide. And not by the rules of the sport, but simply through physical limits. Now, the documentary, while it explained the sport, it didn't do a good job enough of explaining all of those areas so that anyone could understand why some dangers existed and others didn't. Now, for example, when there are safety divers at the very bottom, they're breathing with an oxygen tank. So when they ascend, they have to go up a bit at a time and acclimate their lungs to the new pressure, or else they're going to get the bends. But the freedivers, they don't have to wait because they're traveling with the same amount of oxygen all the way down and then all the way back up. So the farther they go down, the more their lungs compress and then naturally expand again as they rise. Now, their lungs are constantly acclimating to the pressure so that they don't get the bends. And I think this is important because if a diver gets into trouble towards the bottom, the safety diver there can't give them oxygen or carry them all the way to the top. If they give them oxygen, the diver's lungs could explode. And if the safety diver goes up too quickly, they could get into trouble with the bends. Now, I do wish the documentary would have stopped down to just explain some of that so anybody watching could understand. But if you're watching this before seeing the documentary, now you have some insight that it doesn't provide. Overall, The Deepest Breath is informative and thrilling, delivering nail-biting sequences of death-defying feats. The story of Alessia is both captivating and even head-scratching, but it's inspiring to see someone pursue their dreams and goals with ferocity. The interviews are captured well and create a touching, intense narrative, with the standout of the film being the stunning cinematography, showcasing the beauty, majesty, and terror of the ocean depths. Even if you're not into sports but enjoy human stories, give this one a watch. It could take your breath away. Please don't unsubscribe for that. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and while no violence is shown, there are harrowing sequences of people in the throes of possible death. Now, as a reminder, I don't give couch ratings to documentaries, but I highly recommend checking out The Deepest Breath on Netflix. It's quite an intense ride. So, do you think you'd ever try something like freediving? I mean, I'd swim in a big hole in the ocean. I'm not going down deep. Let me know, though, your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.